talk today about the, okay, I have
That
to
was
hit
so
okay.
annoying.
Um, Today we're going to talk about the double diamond and content first design. I will show you the double diamond, but first, content first design is the process by which research, exploration, and evaluation of content requirements and user needs inform the structure, layout, flow, and visuals for a digital product. So how do you do content first design? So this double diamond kind of covers everything. And all of this is covered in the book. But a double diamond isn't a new idea. It's a methodology for any sort of design or other type of creative project. And the idea is that you have a discovery phase and a define phase where you identify the problem, and then the develop, which is designing, and deliver phase where you decide what the solution is. So I'm going to talk through a little bit of this, and the slides will be available after the meeting. Paula will let you know about that. So one of the first things to do in the Discover meeting is have a kickoff meeting. And then the kickoff meeting, you want to gather things like functional requirements, metrics they have already, an analysis, if they have any existing usability tests or user research, anything that can help point to pain points and help to get us to a problem statement workshop. The problem statement workshop is where you really identify the pain point you're trying to address in a user experience. And the pain point can be a business thing, it can be a user thing. Um, but the two, you always have to have user requirements and business requirements going, meeting their goals at the same time. So it's a little bit of a balance. And there are a few ways to go about it, but it's really important, I think, when you're doing content first design, because some companies have so much resistance to it. I think it's really important to include stakeholders in each part of the process so that they understand what's happening and why it's of value, and they don't feel that their toes are getting stepped on. For example, you could say you're going to do content first design, and the UX designer could be like, oh, wait a minute, no, 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 no. And when you include people, you not only get around some of that resistance, but you also get their points of view and their thought from their unique position in the organization. One of the second to last thing we do is a stakeholder interview where we go around, and this is a great way. I can't emphasize enough the importance of building really solid relationships with stakeholders. And by that, I mean understanding what success means to them. What is their job? What is their role? And what does success mean to them? And then you'll have, of course, questions about what you decide the problem statement is, and you'll get ideas, different ideas about how to go about solving it. And what I don't have on here that's in the book is content inventory, which Paula knows all about. And that's an inventory of all the pages, and it can be website wide, or if you're working on a little project that's like a few pages, you still want to inventory them, because in the next define phase, we're going to do a content audit. And I think no matter how, even if it's one page, an audit is really important. And it's important for so many reasons. I can't even, Paula, help me out here. Benefits of a content audit. If you're there, she's not there. The content audit helps you identify what content is working, what isn't working, and where you can sort of hone in on the pain points. It can include things like page hits, page bounce rates, time spent on a page, and it's an invaluable tool when assessing any level of content. The next thing we use to try and get at the user problem is the user journey. And the user journey map clocks the journey from their first their first connection to the company all the way through to their connection to the website, and then the journey they take on the website. And there's the journey we want them to take, and there's the journey that they wind up taking. And how do we bring those two things? How do we correct those two things? And that's one thing that might help us hone in on what the problem statement can be. And the problem statement evolves as you go through all this stuff. You might say, oh, I noticed through the user journey map that we're missing a step here, or through the content audit that this microcopy isn't going to work. It's no one's clicking on it. Could it be the microcopy? And so the problem statement could change, but the problem statement is really critical in driving the project. Some stakeholders will come to like a kickoff meeting with a problem statement already in their hot little hands, but it's really important that everybody gets a chance to sort of look at it and weigh in on it and evaluate it. So you'll notice the discover column is about like gathering all of the data. The define column is about doing user research. And there's a million ways to do user research. And in the book, I write about the ones here and some other ones. But the user interviews are really interesting. And there's a lot of different ways to do those. You can do them with real users if you have the time and the money. Bring people in and interview them about their experience. If you don't have the time and money to do that, you can do what I call guerrilla testing. And that's when you use anyone you can find to run through the experience. It could be someone at work on a different team. It could be someone at home, but you want to run someone through the experience and interview them afterwards. And you can uncover a lot of data and a lot of what the problem is through those. A competitive analysis gives you a ton of information about what everybody else is doing, what's working with them, what isn't, and they're solving what you're running into as a problem. And then empathy mapping, I'll go over more, but empathy mapping is when you look at what they do, say, think, and feel about an experience. And that's really important because it gives us the whole spectrum of the user experience. And there are other things on here like conversation mapping that I don't go into, but they're in the book. And one thing I wanted to say is like, you don't have to do everything under everything, like under define. You don't have to do a user journey, interviews, blah, 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 blah. You can use the ones that A, you have time for, B, are feasible, and C will reveal the most important information about what you're trying to uncover with the problem statement. Okay. Under the develop column, I always want to call it the design column because that's what it is. This is the part of the second diamond. And one of the first things we do is go through, we evaluate all of the research we've gathered. And we have some ideas now about how to approach the problem. So the first thing we do is create a priority guide, which is sort of a fancy way for saying like a detailed outline of how what is the conversation we want to be having with people. And one of the things I say a lot is that every digital experience is a conversation with the user. And how can we have the conversation if we don't know the words? So the priority guide is a detailed outline of the conversation we want to have with the user. And it can be like very brief, content designy statements, but whatever you need there to get the point across of what you're trying to achieve. Those are hugely helpful in shaping the UX flow. And it's also really helpful at this point to make sure your UX designers are involved because they're going to want to know where you're coming from and what's happening in the project. And then UX writing and design, that's like the part we all have fun with. We, based on our experiences with the discover and define phase, we look at the priority guide and we get busy working with the designer on the UX writing and what the flow should look like. And collaboration is key, especially at this point. I think designers and content strategists should work together all through this, but if they can't, at least have them involved in like a review of what's under the defined results and sit through the priority guide and work together on the UX writing and design, because you want to both be in sync with what that conversation is that you're having with the user. And if you don't have that collaboration, it's not going to work. So once you have sort of your prototype or some wireframes or a sketch, you get to present to all the stakeholders. And you want to present what you learned under the define phase, remind them what the problem statement was, and show them what you did based on what you learned throughout, so that it raises the level of the conversation, not to opinion. People will be like, I just don't like that word on the button, but it will raise the conversation to one of facts. And you can say, well, this user interview pointed to the fact that X, and we're basing our decision on that, unless you have another idea. And also presenting, can be tough because people all they kind of want to win their point of view. And I think the most important thing to do is let people know the type of feedback you're looking for, where you're at in the project, and then to listen and listen to people so that they feel really heard. And you also have done all these stakeholder interviews, so you know where these people are coming from and what their definition of success looks like. So you can sort of manage the feedback that's going to be helpful and the feedback that isn't. And also set up the meeting so that it's clear for people not to talk over each other, that everybody's opinion is valued, and that everyone, just to really listen and take notes. And when you leave there, it's time to evaluate the feedback you got and think about, what was valuable, what was on target, what maybe, pointed to something you missed. And a lot of times I've gotten feedback where they're like, oh, right here, this doesn't work, you should do this. And to me, I thought, oh, I shouldn't do that, but they're pointing to a pain point and I need to address that, but I think it should be like this. So you can't take everything at face value. What it's doing, the feedback is pointing you to pain points. And once you have the feedback, you get back together with your friendly designer and you iterate and iterate, and you go sort of through this cycle of iterate, present, look at the feedback, iterate, present, till you get sign off and you have final delivery. And that's when you turn it over to the developers. Excuse me. And they're going to get busy building this thing. So when we deliver to development and this thing gets launched, we want to do a lot of usability testing because we have feedback from metrics and stuff. But the usability testing is with real people. It's taking them through tasks, it's moderated, and real results come back. User feedback you can gather in a million different ways. Again, you can have a group come in, or you could do, guerrilla testing where you have people try it. in different aspects of your life or on different teams at the company. And I've done that, and it has actually worked to give me some good feedback. I mean, really trying to identify user pain points and to make sure you're achieving the business goals. Then the metrics and analytics become really important. And I worked on a project at CVS that was funded by the federal government in part, and it was when it became legal for your insurance company had to send you like pay for 2 to 4 COVID tests. I can't remember which one, but we looked at metrics once we launched that. There were like 80 million people looking at it, so we were looking at metrics every 15 minutes, every half hour, every hour, and making changes, looking at what the pain point was, making the changes we needed to make hand in hand with designers, content designers, and product people. So that's how helpful metrics can be. And typically that is not the case. It's not so high pressure of an environment, but metrics can really help you after the fact point to pain points. It can also help you show like your huge success. And that's what we want to see. And again, based on these testing and feedback and metrics, we evaluate and iterate again. And we go through basically the same process of evaluating the feedback and iterating until the final delivery, where we hand off what we think is going to be the very final version. So that's a lot to absorb, and it's important to remember you don't have to do everything in every column. It's a suggestion, and there are many things that you can do that I don't have on here. I did this is one methodology for doing content first design, and it's one that's worked for me. And there was only so much room I could write in the book, but especially under define. There's so many types of user research you can do. And Erica Jorgensen wrote a great book about that, about researching and measuring content. And I
Yeah.
highly recommend that book. But that column could be a mile long. And if you read her
Right.
book, you'll
We
learn a
have
lot.
a question actually from Igata in Egypt. And she's saying collaboration is a keyword for me with content first design approach. You request a seat for content designers from start to end. How do you collaborate in terms of ownership of tasks and deliverables?
Ah,
And
that is a really good
together with
question.
the product manager, right? And the product designer in particular.
Okay, could you read the end of it again? I got as far as ownership of the project.
Yeah, collaboration is the keyword with the content first design approach. You request a seat for content designers from start to end. How do you collaborate in terms of ownership of tasks and deliverables when working together with the product manager and the product designer?
That's interesting. That is, I think, education. I think that has to be a team effort to decide with product UX design and UX content, when you're implementing a new process at work, like content first design, there's a lot of foundational work that has to get done. And that sort of process, how we're going to work together, how we're going to collaborate, and what the dates are, what the deliverables are, and who has a say on what,
Totally.
are, is foundational work that you would have to do. I wish I'd thought of that. I would have written about it in my book.
Ah! No, that is cruxy stuff, right? Like that is yeah, that's some stuff. Hmm, good question.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Well, as folks have questions, please just go ahead and put them in the chat, but Sarah, go ahead
Yep.
Okay,
and continue on and we'll get to them as they come in.
Yeah.
on we go. So what about people who resist this approach? And this comes down to advocating for content first design. When you get a lot of resistance, what do you do? And I think invite them to the party is the first thing. Like, let them in on what's going on. Like, first educate them to what the process is. Then invite them to the research that you do and let them understand why it's good for business. And this can all be done through education and presentations. And it's so good for business. It doesn't mean they're going to jump on it all at once, but that's one of your best resources for advocating is education. And then emphasize with people that it's a collaboration that involves everybody listening and being respectful. And advocating is so much about the relationships we're building with stakeholders that I talked about earlier. It's like the more you know about what a person's role is and what success means to them, the more you can curate the information you're going to give them and how you're going to educate them and how you can get them on your board. Like, hey, let's try it once. Let's see what happens, and have old statistics to weigh up against new ones. So why is content first design good for business? First of all, it focuses on user needs. From the very beginning under that define column, we were doing user research. It improves SEO because it's driven by what users want. So it's driven by what they want and how they talk, and it improves SEO because it takes all of that into consideration. So if someone types in, I want this, you have it written in their language. And it's in your website, so the search engine picks it up. So it enhances clarity and purpose of a page or a task or information because you've uncovered a lot of the pain points. It speeds up the design process, which is antithetical to what most people think it slows it down, but it speeds it up because you spend less time on the design phase and less time redoing pages that don't work, that aren't user-centered enough.
That is key. Yes.
It creates a cohesive brand experience, reduces wasted time and resources, and that's really huge too, because when you're redoing experiences, you're wasting time and you're wasting money, and everybody's like, come on, hurry up and get it done, and you can hurry up and get it done wrong, or you can hurry up and get it done right. It's not going to slow you down to have it content led, and it will help drive conversions because you know what that micro copy should say on that button. Any questions here?
There is one, Sarah, in the chat. Imelda is asking, from your knowledge, can you name any company that uses the content first approach?
I think from what I've read, and do not hold me to this, I think Airbnb, Spotify, and Asana might be three big ones that use it. It's hard to know because people don't say, hey, this is what we're doing, because it's giving away their playbook. Okay. So I talked about doing a content inventory and audit. And I did it for a class that I taught at Bentley University, where I have students go through all of those defined steps of getting to know the user and they do this audit, and it was for a website, a cruddy website called crabtreecpa.com. And I wanted to pick a cruddy website so they could redo it using just content. So they wrote down like the key messages, the goal of the page, the key actions, the knowledge level, was it inclusive and was it usable? And they used this to guide some of their thinking in how they were going to handle the problem at hand, which was a lot. I just wanted to show you something that not a lot of people know about, but maybe more people know about it than I think. An empathy map is a really cool way of learning about your user. And the way that you implement it is you're going to walk someone through an experience and take down notes or record it. And you want to capture what they say. And at each spot where they're going to do something, you want to ask them what they're thinking right now. What are you feeling right now? And then you log in what they do, what they actually do. What we learned from this at TIA, which was a huge financial services company, was by understanding what people think and feel, we learned a lot about what they're going to do. And that was really educational. But a lot of what they think is based on, we learned like a lack of knowledge about financial information. And that told us we needed to really slow tasks down, almost step by step, and reassure them along the way that they were doing the right thing. Because even people who were super computer savvy were afraid of dealing with financial things online. And when they feel, a lot of times the feeling was nervous, scared. And that told us sort of the same thing, like we really need to find a way to help people understand what they're doing, um, to actually do it, and to take into consideration that they don't know what they're doing a lot of times, and they are very nervous about managing their money online. And it's fun. That's a fun project.
There's an interesting question that popped up, Sarah.
Sure.
With this content first approach, what's the what's the alternative? Do other approaches to take efficiency and the user experience into account?
Well, most companies are design first, and they take user experience and they do user research and stuff. But it's about visuals. It's
Yeah,
not about how we're communicating through words. And the visuals and the flows are important, but when you don't have the deep research into content, your your designs aren't going to be as successful as if you had. So
that's right.
content first isn't a new thing, it's a thing that people want to do, but they don't do.
Yeah, I think the answer that I want to give to that question is people really focus on the visual,
Yeah,
which makes a lot of sense. But come on, there's the information that we need. We need the information, and that's where the content piece comes in.
yeah. What's this conversation we're trying to have with our user? What do we need to say to them? What do they need to hear?
Right.
It's a good question.
Yeah. And the empathy map, I think, helps.
Yes. What's this? User interviews. So these it was a class, so we went into breakout rooms. It was a virtual class, and people looked at the difficult website and asked, "What are you seeing overall? How likely are you to read the page? What is the page saying? What would you do next? what's missing and how likely are you to reach out. So they get some good feedback here that they could use to try to redesign the site. And I didn't include like all of the content research they did. They did conversation mapping and story mapping, and came up with a lot of data, qualitative data, to help them redesign a page of a website. So I already talked about this, but I'll reiterate, make it clear what kind of feedback you're looking for when you present to stakeholders. Encourage one person to speak at a time and listen, listen, listen. Can't emphasize that enough. Have a clear it's also helpful when someone says, you know, this button, it seems based on this research you found, should be like this. Repeat what they say back to them to make sure you got it right. Have a clear presentation with the problem statement, what you did to get your arms around it, and how you reached the decisions that you did. Take notes and remember, no one here is to win. The only goal of these meetings is to be of service to the user. So this was the first crummy website I found that needed a rehaul. And some of the students did this for their final project. And they just used content and the some of the tools and techniques we've covered so far to come up with how to redesign it. So this woman, you know, they can't obviously do all the design, but they did the wireframes. So they wrote more words. So she wrote in these yellow boxes why she made the decision she did. The sections are titled based on the services, audience-based sectioning titles. Each highlights a main nav. So they had to present their rationale based on what we learned in the class to how they reconfigured this website. Oops. It looks pretty different. The other one was, I'll show you again, was a mess. And it was all SEO keyword stuff, which shows you how old it was. And another site we did was this website cracks me up because it's so like 1990s, and it's called Gates and Fences. And here they're trying to sell like the button you use to get in, like just like you would for your car garage or something. And they're trying to describe it and sell it right there. And my student's response was really cool. He said he never should have used Lorem Ipsum. He got a spank for that, slap on the hand. But he made things filters, so you could filter in on what you wanted instead of being presented with a huge amount of stuff, and get to these two items that were appropriate. And then he had on the side more like this. So that's the extent of my spiel. I wanted to talk about, we do a moving content forward discussion series and blog about what everybody's doing in the field to move the state of us, our art forward. And those discussions Paula was on last week, and it was really fun and interesting. And we get to hear from a lot of cool people. And we just have open, honest dialogue about what we're all doing to evolve the art of content design. And sometimes AI comes into it and it gets all heated up. And I want to introduce my book, which comes out on, I think, Monday, Content First Design. And you can learn about our discussions and workshops and content services at the website, and stay up to date with our newsletter or our coming soon What We're Up To page, where you'll see all the events and find past podcasts and videos. if you want to connect for a free chat anytime, this isn't a sales pitch, it's just a networking thing. Make a date anytime on my Calendly page.
Oh, right on, Sarah. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I've met some really cool people and
Uh,
made some interesting connections. So
yeah.
yeah, if you're just curious or feel like talking or need a therapy session, give me a shout.
There was a
That's great.
question that came up actually.
Pardon me?
There was a question that came up that I wanted to run by you.
Sure.
The question was, with this approach, how are you handling the annotations, content annotations, and the designs?
It doesn't really change that. Um, I mean, the annotations are usually what they have to be, right?
Yeah.
And they're usually refer to something on the page. So it would have to be on that page, and ask if I'm not correct about that, let me know.
They were saying like, what are you including in those annotations? Like, what kind of information?
I don't know what annotations. I don't understand the question, I guess.
I
I'm
guess I
sorry.
don't either. Imelda March, if you want to type in a clarification, please do. Oh, and we've got the link for Sarah's calendar. Perfect. Perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and post in also just ways that you can connect with us. Links in the chat. So
And if this was a lot to take in and absorb, I was talking fast. But if it was a lot to take in and absorb, definitely check out the book. It goes step by step by step with long explanations of how to do things, and it's a methodology that's been really successful for me. So check it out, see what you think. If you have words to say or disagree with it or think I'm full of malarkey, send me an email. I'm always happy to hear whatever people think. And definitely don't be a stranger. Reach out.
So we do on that note, Sarah, actually, there is a little more clarification on the question about annotations, which is Imelda says that annotations are notes that the designer or designers put in the designs to help the dev ship it correctly. It also tells the developer the function of the page. And then someone actually asked too, by annotations, does the poster mean changes / edits? If
Oh,
so, wouldn't
I
that,
don't think that would change. I think that
yeah,
would stay the same.
yeah, great. Also a question about whether you teach any courses. So, I mean, I think the first
I
question
teach a
is,
ton of
yeah,
courses.
yeah,
If you go to contentfirstdesign.com, you'll see workshops. And it's
yeah.
fun. We're doing a couple in April.
oh, right on. I just posted the link. Um, and I wanted to encourage everybody, yeah, just I posted a couple of links to our donations link, and also, yeah, feel free to leave event feedback on Meetup. That's always a good thing.
I hope that
Any
goes well.
any other questions? One comment I would make, Sarah, is I remember, very early in my career, and I think this may be something that, people who are newer to their roles or new to an organization, I recall being brought in on a project, and I actually had put a, a comment to this effect, or kind of a shout out to this effect in the chat about being sort of shown, here's the design, right? And this is what this site is going to look like. This is how we're going to present this content. And having, basically hard coded into that design, content fields that weren't remotely I mean, even from a technical perspective, weren't appropriate to the content. You know,
Right.
as it happened, it was a product site, it was high-end audio equipment, and you know, the available space to put in the product description was, you know, the tiny little, you know, the pages looked beautiful, but it was maybe maybe 3 or 4, 5 sentences worth of content. Well, if you're doing something like buying, you know, high-end audio equipment, you're someone who cares a lot about those specs,
Right.
right? And you want to
Right.
know a lot of detail. And so I wonder just, you know, if you could talk a little bit about kind of, you know, how, first of all, you know, I know kind of upfront, we're talking about kind of getting in on getting those conversations, you know, working with design up front, but, you know, if you are sort of earlier in your role, or you're working with an agency that's very sort of design first, you know, just sort of any additional sort of tips you have for kind of getting yourself into those conversations sooner and making sure that, you know, you talked before about when you, I noticed in your audit, the sheet that you showed from your audit, that one of the things that you were looking at was sort of purpose of the page. And I love that, because I think that's a good way to think through, you know, what exactly are we trying to do here and what are the implications for content. But somewhere I'm getting to a question here, which I think maybe is just to say, you know, any kind of additional tips or anything you have for people getting kind of into that
Sure.
conversation, you know, at the right
I think you
point.
kind of answered it with your question, which when you said, you know, you ask questions of these people, but the questions you ask are going to let them know that you're thinking and that what they're doing isn't working. You know, the questions you ask can be user-based. Um, ask what they're doing for user research, what they're doing for content research, you know, ask why they made this decision. And the more you're known as someone who's like digging into strategy,
Mhm.
the more likely, you know, you're gonna gain influence.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And of course, I'm always happy to hear that you recommend starting with an inventory and audit. So,
Of
all
course. I learned so
right.
much from your book. It's insane. I send it to people in my circle.
Oh, thank you. That's sweet. Any other questions, comments? Anything anyone would like Sarah to expand on at all?
Yeah, looks like people are good.
No?
Yeah, I just posted you know, a couple more links and stuff. And yeah, just connect with us with those links. I'll post one more time our various social sites, and you can connect with us at any of those links.
All right. And a reminder that you can connect with Sarah at contentfirstdesign.com and calendly.com/sajwriter. Please do reach out to her and buy her book.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you,
All right.
everybody, for
Yes.
listening.
Thanks everyone for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.